Rogers TV. The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers Cable or Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome to Politically Speaking, Election Edition. I'm David Shearman. And today I have with me Chris Neudorf, who is the candidate for the New Democratic Party here in Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound. Chris, welcome. Good to see you today.
Hello.
Now, you're no stranger to Rogers. Your face is no stranger to Rogers because you've been on our provincial election coverage, but this is a new thing for you. You've decided to run for the federal New Democrats.
Well, I actually should mention that I have done this once before in 2021. So it feels new, but it always feels new, I suppose. It's new-ish. But yes, I have decided to run for the federal New Democrats. I've been involved with the local party for a couple of years now. I'm currently the president of the riding association. And I just think it's really important that we have local candidates running in these elections, and I want to have the chance to share some alternatives with my community, some alternative ways of solving some of the problems we have, and I'm very passionate about that. So I'm excited to be doing it.
So what do you do in real life?
So in real life, I am a high school teacher. I'm currently at home because we have a rain day. Originally, I figured during my lunch break I'd have to kind of find a different spot outside of school and do this on my phone. So this actually kind of worked out nicely. But usually right now I'd be on my lunch break. But I teach history, civics, English, and I love it. It's a wonderful job.
Do you have a background in civics and history and politics at all?
Yes. I went to university for history. I never had the chance to take political science because I was taking education and history, and that sort of fills up your timetable. But politics and history are pretty indissoluble. So you kind of do a lot of politics in the course of studying history. So history has sort of been my life ever since I was a child. I knew from a pretty young age that I wanted to be a history teacher, and ultimately that's what came to fruition. Politically, I've always been very politically engaged. As I said, I think history and politics are kind of hard to separate. But I became involved in politics in 2019 when I moved to Owen Sound and joined the NDP Riding Association then. And I've been pretty involved with that ever since.
Sure. So this is really is this your first serious political involvement with the NDP?
Do you mean as a candidate or?
Well, just generally.
Yes, I was involved occasionally with NDP ridings when I was in undergraduate and while I was attending graduate school, but never as a long-term member, more as an occasional volunteer. It was when I moved to Owen Sound that I realized I had a chance to actually be more involved because I now had a permanent dwelling and a permanent community. So it was really the same year I moved here that I really started to get actively and consistently involved as opposed to just occasionally volunteering during elections.
Well, what drew you to the NDP?
It really my values. I think that we have a responsibility to help people who are in need. There's a wonderful poem called "No Man is an Island," which I think really kind of says it all. You know that every person's sort of interconnected, and no one lives in this world alone and operates alone. All of us rely on each other to a certain extent. And I think that the NDP kind of embodies the values of community and caring for each other and helping each other. And I also think that more left-wing economics work. I think economic structures where the government gets involved, regulates, invests, guarantees high-paying jobs, I think that works a lot better than a free market system that just allows money to shift to the rich at the expense of the poor. I think the economic experiment of trickle-down economics that really we start playing with in the 80s and have played with for 40 years has been, frankly, a failure. So I think a more left-wing economic approach is more rational. So it's values and my feelings on economics. I think that a country as rich as ours shouldn't have a homelessness problem or a housing problem. I think we can solve these. And I think that to solve them, we have to try new tactics. So there's a values aspect, which is the ethics of it, that I think we have a responsibility to help the weakest and poorest in our society, that a society can be judged by how it treats its poorest and its weakest. And there's also a rational aspect where I think that a strong a government assisted designed economic program has historically worked better.
Mhm. So how do you see that working out going forward? What would an NDP government look like?
Well, an NDP government, first of all, would start to place the tax burden back onto the elite. We've seen a 300% increase in overall income for the top 20%, even higher for the top 1% in the course of the last 20 years, while we've seen wages stagnate for working Canadians, both middle class and lower class, especially in the service sector. An NDP government would support fixing this both through greater social services for poorer communities, increasing the tax burden on people like Galen Weston rather than decreasing it, investment in public infrastructure like housing, prioritizing government contracts with Canadian businesses that are unionized in order to encourage our private sector to be more welcoming to unionization, which is the best way for workers to actually gain power and autonomy. We would do this fundamentally by cooperating with workers and taking a workers first approach, using the power of government to enhance the ability of workers to negotiate better contracts with their employers, to encourage employers to accept unionization, and to use the power of government to help to provide critical services like food, of which we have recently proposed caps on food prices for that reason, and housing, which would require a serious government-funded nonprofit housing initiative, which none of the other parties are really talking about seriously right now. It would all boil down to a government that is no longer working to enrich a small few, but instead is working to take the incredible wealth we have in this country and use it for the benefit of all.
It would be interesting to see if that ever plays out.
It would.
Yeah.
I think it good. I really do.
Hey, that's what we have an electoral system for, is that people can have exchange of values and agree to disagree, we hope.
Yes.
If I were to ask you what you believe the three top issues are today for voters, what would you say?
Well, I think tariffs first and foremost. We've been living in a period of economic instability because of our, frankly, trickle-down economic model already for years, and the tariffs add a whole new layer of instability to that. I think that's a really big one. I think housing would be a second issue that people are seriously concerned about. I think that folks my age, it's getting harder to buy houses. I have so many friends who have told me outright that they've just given up, which is heartbreaking to hear, on buying a house. And I think that a lot of folks in the boomer generation and Generation X are starting to see that their children and grandchildren can't afford the lifestyle they afforded. And being able to afford consistent housing is an important milestone. You can't expect my generation or Generation Z or Generation Alpha to be able to continue to grow and develop, to start families, get permanent careers if they don't have housing. And then the final thing, I think, is cost of living. We're living in a huge inflationary crisis. We've seen wages stagnate because of a failure to implement any real system of cost of living adjustments for wages, and costs have skyrocketed. And the only response from our government so far really has been to increase the price of mortgages, which doesn't really help with the housing situation. All of these kind of come back to one fundamental issue, and that is life has gotten too expensive, because we're not helping people anymore, and we're allowing corporations to make really unlimited profits. So all of them really come down to the fact that it's so difficult right now to keep a roof over your head, food on the table, and know you got a job tomorrow.
What's let's tease out tariffs a bit. What policies would the New Democrats bring to the table around tariffs? I mean, let's face it, we've got an 800-pound gorilla to the south of us.
Yes, we do. I can give you a little overview of what we have so far. Our policy is still evolving. In fact, just today, Jagmeet Singh has announced new policy initiatives for tariffs. So let me give you kind of the broad outline, and then maybe I can add a little few more details. Broadly speaking, any dollar for dollar tariff retaliation comes with the problem, as you've already stated, that we're a large-sized man fighting an 800-pound silverback. They have a 10-to-1 population advantage. They are the reserve currency of the world. They have huge advantages over us when it comes to economic power. So if we're going to do retaliatory tariffs, we need to accept that it could be for a long time and it's going to increase the cost of living, which is already a problem here. That's why Jagmeet Singh and the NDP have proposed that every single dollar made from those tariffs must be returned to workers in terms of services. And the biggest for this would be the expansion of EI. We want to expand EI benefits to up to 2/3 of the insured pay and at least $450 a week. We also want to expand shared EI. So companies, instead of laying off lower seniority workers or certain portions of workers wholesale, instead have to spread the available hours for working if they have to downsize throughout the entirety of their workers, and those remaining hours are made up with EI. And in this way, we're hoping, well, we're planning, not hoping, because this would work, we intend to maintain their standard of living, even if their job hours are reduced as a result of US tariffs. And we use that using the tariffs we impose in order to fight back against the United States and the revenue drawn from there. So yes, we're having to place in tariffs, but the tariffs will benefit the workers. We also want to impose limitations on grocery prices. Grocery prices are out of control, and let's be realistic. Every study on the issue has shown that the inflation of groceries as a result of COVID was not commensurate to supply chain stress. It has increased more than it should have. There was price gouging here, and it's not exactly the first time they've done this. So we're ready to play hardball. We're willing to negotiate with our major grocery chains in order to negotiate price caps. But if they're not willing to meet us halfway, we're willing to impose them. We're not the only country to do this. France has also done this very successfully. Right now, we need to take serious action in order to make sure people can actually afford to eat. Beyond these, we also intend to expand government relationships with good Canadian businesses. We're going to end the procurement by the federal government of all American services and companies unless they're providing a service that at that moment we cannot provide. And the majority of services, so to speak, that American companies provide, we could do as well. And this is the key, and this is the part you're not going to see in the Carney plan or the Conservative plan. We are going to prioritize companies with good union practices. We want to incentivize Canadian companies that if they want to get those federal contracts, they want to take this opportunity to start taking Canadian business back from Americans and be part of that process. They're going to have to accept the unionization of their workers, because it's not enough that these companies get to profit. It's not enough that Canadian companies replace American companies. We need Canadian workers to be paid well. In addition, with the tariffs, we have to be concerned about the auto sector, because the auto sector is going to take a hit. And Trump has been very, very clear that the purpose of the tariffs is to compel auto companies to move their production from Canada and other countries to the United States. Our NDP government says it's not going to be that simple. The Canadian government has invested $30 billion into the auto industry, and an NDP government will prevent any auto industry, any automotive factory from gutting its factories and changing location if it accepted public funds, and the majority of them have. We will use every legal asset at our disposal. We will not allow these companies to take our money and run. So we're going to keep companies we've invested in, private companies, we're going to keep them here. We're going to expand EI. We're going to cap the cost of groceries in order to mitigate for some of the damage of tariffs. And we're going to encourage new procurement of Canadian industries to replace American industries, but on the basis of accepting unionization. And that way, the workers are going to enjoy the benefits of seeing the Canadianization of our economy. The truth is, we're learning that we can no longer be an economic colony of the United States, where we hew the wood and run the water, and they build the infrastructure. It's time for Canadian companies to do it, but unionized Canadian companies that put the needs of workers ahead of profits.
One of the things that has been a kind of a sideshow in all this tariff discussion is military defense.
Hmm.
What is the NDP saying about defense of Canada and the need for guarding our borders?
It's an issue the NDP takes seriously, and right now we're still hashing out our specific defense policy. One of the concerns we have with defense is that our defense needs to be in the interest of all Canadians. We know the Conservative leader, and I have to apologize. I don't know why, but I always struggle with his name.
Mr. Poilievre.
Poilievre, thank you. I don't know why I struggle with it. I think it's just the way it's spelled. It's a great name. I have trouble saying it. But Poilievre recently was in the Northwest Territories, where he proposed the building of new Canadian bases to expand our NORAD defense program, which in and of itself is not a terrible idea, but he did so without consultation with the Indigenous community there. And whenever we're talking about military expansion, we need to remember that we have a history of seizing Indigenous land for military expansion and defense without consultation. The most famous example of this was the creation of Camp Borden and the seizure of Indigenous land during the Second World War. So an NDP government would be committed to ensuring that we are working with our Indigenous allies in that expansion of the defense. The other aspect that we need to consider is the fact that one of the major problems we have in the military is the fact that recruitment is at an all-time low. And that is in part because we don't do a great deal for soldiers after they've come back home. And an NDP government in expanding social services, that would include expanding veterans benefits and making military service more attractive. We need to remember, if we're going to send these people into dangerous situations, then we need to be prepared to help them and support them afterwards as well. So the NDP is not opposed to military expansion in the wake of these threats, but we want to do so on the basis of creating the best conditions for our soldiers so we can increase recruitment, and we want to do so in discussion, in communication with our various communities, especially our First Nations communities, so that we do not repeat the mistakes of the past of seizing land unfairly.
Sure. What about we're inextricably linked to the United States. Do you see the NDP changing that in terms of defense?
In terms of defense?
Yeah.
I don't see us completely changing that right now, because yes, we are very linked, and the statements made by Donald Trump are disturbing and concerning. This is not the first time the United States has made statements of this kind. It's been about a century or so, but a century and a half, but it isn't the first time. And we need to remember that the United States is still a part of NATO, that the United States is still cooperating with NATO, including in Ukraine, although nowhere near as much as they were before. And I think it's important that we take our time with this situation. United States democracy is capricious. Donald Trump will be president for, still the rest of these 4 years. It feels like it's been 4 years, but his presidency will end. And I think it's important that all of NATO still try to maintain the best relations possible. So I don't want to jump the gun and say that we're going to completely split from the United States in terms of military cooperation and defense. I do think that we need to begin to become a little more self-reliant. And actually, I would like to mention before we move on, part of that means creating our own military infrastructure. A problem that we're facing, a problem that a lot of the world is facing, is the majority of their weaponry is developed in the United States. Despite the fact that we have subcontractors in Canada, most of the actual finished products coming from the US. And history tells us that in a worst case scenario, and God forbid if we were in a non-military alliance with the United States or something even worse, it's really not a good idea to procure your weaponry or supplies from another country that's no longer friendly. So I do think that an investment in Canadian infrastructure can include an investment in the expansion of our military infrastructure, which is again industrial labor, which we would prioritize as unionized jobs or as nationalized production. But either way, it's an opportunity to expand our own internal production and to create good paying jobs in order to produce that equipment. So I think part of military expansion would necessarily have to rely on public investment in infrastructure, which needs to be either through nationalized infrastructure, which will guarantee high paying jobs, or in an NDP government, if it's going to be a privatized company like Bombardier, it has to be through unionized labor.
Let's shift the focus just a little bit because one of the other big issues, at least before the election, was climate change and the what was popularly called the gas tax or climate tax. And what's your party's position on climate change at this point?
Would you like me to talk about climate change first or
Sure.
carbon tax?
And then we can go into the tax issue.
Sure. So, when it comes to climate change, broadly speaking, we still remain in favor of a Green New Deal. We want to see a public investment in renewable energy sources. Wind and solar are very promising, especially solar, and I would include nuclear in that as well. Nuclear is as we know, in our riding and our neighboring riding, nuclear power is a safe and very effective means of environmentally stable energy production. Um, so we still want to move away from oil and gas. We still want to move away from continually paying out massive subsidies to oil and gas production, which is ultimately dooming our climate. And this is an opportunity for infrastructural development. And again, I really think infrastructural development is key to any plan we have. It should revolve around creating more job opportunity for Canadians. And you can do that with the construction of green energy infrastructure like solar panels, like wind power. And I think we do that in part by moving away from fossil fuel and moving away from the subsidies of fossil fuel. And this kind of brings me to the carbon tax. One of the great ironies of the carbon tax is the carbon tax placed taxes ostensibly on oil producing companies, while simultaneously the Trudeau government was feeding those same companies billions of dollars of subsidies, each subsidy cheerfully supported by the Conservatives. Um, and we ultimately support the ending of the carbon tax. The NDP in general, we don't like solutions that tend to favor business. And the carbon tax was ultimately a solution that favored big business over working people because those taxes could be, and basically were designed to be, moved on to the consumer. And that's not the best approach because ultimately we know the consumer is already struggling. We would prefer solutions that instead shift the onus onto big business. Instead of doing a carbon tax that be passed on to people, we'd prefer to see subsidies redirected towards green energy production to wean off of oil and gas. And we also would support the continuation and expansion of eco-housing development. Individuals who do want to make their houses more eco-friendly through the installation of new windows, through more efficient heat pump systems. They can have an impact on their own personal carbon footprint and reduce their own cost of living. It's a win-win, but that only works if the government provides those subsidies, which unfortunately the Conservatives want to cut. So we would support the continuation of housing subsidies for personally greener houses. We support the cutting of the carbon tax in order to implement instead more efficient, even nationalized green energy production systems using subsidies that heretofore are given to big oil and gas. And we want to do a worker first solution, a Green New Deal, if you will, as opposed to a system which ultimately punishes the average worker for the environmental crisis.
Do you see it being a kind of a seesaw here? We've got about, just to let you know, we've got about 4 minutes left, but do you see this kind of a seesaw here between good jobs, climate, and there's got to be some give in the system somewhere?
There is. But I think that I think if it is a seesaw right now, the seesaw is not equal. I think right now we've really prioritized the interests of big business over environment, over infrastructure, over the needs of workers. And the policies I'm describing are a balance. I'm not saying that we're going to abolish oil and gas tomorrow. That's not feasible. Too much of our economy runs on it. But when we begin to wean off and begin to shift some of that money towards green energy production, we can begin to shift some of those jobs over there. I am not saying that we are going to fundamentally change the structure of, say, our chain of grocery supplies tomorrow. But what we can do is we can make prices fair, and we can make grocery companies more accountable to people. So I agree it's a seesaw, but I think right now the seesaw is weighted so heavily towards the interests of a very few and against the interests of the many that the seesaw is imbalanced. I'd like to at least start to balance it and maybe even push it a little more in favor of workers.
Now let's go to a couple of practical matters, Chris. There will be all candidates debates between now and the end of the month. You'll be participating?
Yes, I have to arrange it around my work schedule. So whenever I'm contacted, I do ask if it's possible not to do it during working hours because I take my job very seriously. I love my job. So I'm hoping that so far all parties who have contacted me have been very accommodating about that. But barring that potential problem, yes, I intend to be at them. I'm actually quite looking forward to it.
Now, do you have a campaign headquarters or office or contact for people if they want to find out more information?
Yes, we do have a contact. We don't have a direct office in this election. We decided to forego it for this one, given the speed of the snap election and for efficiency. But I can be found. Our campaign can be found on Facebook. This is actually rather embarrassing. I forgot to actually have the contact information in front of me.
That's all right, because all you've got to say is Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound NDP, and I'm sure it'll pop up.
Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound NDP. We have Bruce-Grey NDP at Gmail account that we can be reached at. We can be found on Facebook as well. And on our Facebook page, you can find our contact info for our campaign office. Let's see, I have the campaign phone number as well, though. Am I supposed to give that out?
Not to worry, Chris. There'll be lots of time to get that out there.
Sorry.
Social media will absolutely do a great job.
Okay. Weakness I have is I'm very policy focused. I tend to. That's why I've got a campaign team. I tend to be
Chris, we have less than a minute left. Are there 3 words you'd like to leave people with?
There's a little more than 3, please. It's time to put workers first.
Okay. So put workers first and vote NDP would be your request.
Darn right.
Okay. Chris Neudorf, thank you for being a part of Politically Speaking Election Edition today, and best wishes, and we'll see what happens on the night of April 28th.
Thank you so much. It was great chatting.
Thank you, and thank you, friends. I'm David Shearman. Oh, we've got lots more to come.
This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details. This is Rogers TV.
We invite you to play What's My Line?
Welcome, Mrs. Baker. Those folks over there need to guess your extraordinary occupation.
Are you an entertainer, Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Do people come to watch you perform?
Yes. Do you travel for work? Yes, I do.
Do you ever wear a special type of costume?
Yes.
Is your job, physical?
Yes, indeed.
Are you a member of a team?
Yes.
Are you a professional baseball player?
Yes, I am.
Created during the Second World War, the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League included 68 Canadians. One of its brightest stars was my mother, Saskatchewan's Mary Bonnie Baker, a pioneer for women in sports.
Public transit, garbage pickup, parks and recreation programs, snow removal on your street. How can you stay informed about these and other important local services? Tune to City Council coverage on Rogers TV. See your community leaders at work on Rogers TV City Council coverage.
Hi, and welcome to Politically Speaking Election Edition. I'm David Shearman. My guest today is Alex Ruff, who is the candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada. Sorry, I'm a baby boomer. I was channeling John Diefenbaker, Alex. My apologies. Anyway, welcome, Alex. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, David. Thank you for having me.
And indeed, you are the candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada, but you also have been the elected MP incumbent. How many terms is it now?
I've been successfully elected twice, David. This is my third kick at it that I'm going to hopefully have the privilege to represent Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound should the people want me.
Well, let me ask you, Alex, why did you choose to run again?
Well, because I still feel like it can make a difference. One of the reasons I got into politics in the first place and left, I like to think a great career in the Canadian Armed Forces in the military and leave a decade early was because, the small p politics, even within the bureaucracy of the Canadian Armed Forces, was getting somewhat frustrating. And the more I thought about it when I got broached to get into politics, the more excited I got, and that passion was there. Well, that passion is still there, David. I really feel I can continue to make a difference and continue to be that voice of Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound in Ottawa and stand up for the things that I think are important, not only for myself, but for the majority of the constituents in Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound.
Now, you had a career in the military, but you're from this community, are you not?
Oh yeah, I'm living on the same home farm in just south of Tara that my grandparents got after Grandpa was done with World War II. He was a bomber pilot in World War II and bought the home farm just south of Tara, 78 acres I have there south of Tara. And yep, born and raised, went to public school or elementary school at Erin Tara, off to Chesley District High School. Unfortunately, that high school is no longer a high school. And then off to the Royal Military College and into my military career, but I've been home now for 6 years, and I've never really lost my connection to back home. I've actually been a member of the Tara Legion longer than I was in the military. I joined it a month before I enrolled in the military, and I've been back here speaking and engaged with students. It's one of my passions. If I hadn't done a military career, I'm pretty sure I would have ended up being a math and phys ed teacher, likely back here if I hadn't gone the military route, because as I think I've told you before, David, I've been all around the globe. 5 operational overseas deployments, 2 in Bosnia, 2 in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq, 37 some countries I think I've been to now. I can solve all the world's problems with one thing, and that's with education. And I'm not talking about diplomas or degrees. I'm talking about teaching people to critically think and challenge what they're hearing and make sure that they're looking at things from all the best angles possible. So huge gratitude to our teachers and those people that choose to get involved in trying to get information out there. And thank you for doing this show, because that's part of what our democratic process is, giving candidates an opportunity to let the voters know who they are and what they stand for.
Sure, and you've also had in your career in the House, you've also been on several committees. You've also were part of an operation to bring Afghan parliamentarians to Canada as well, were you not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the key reasons why I'm still doing this is I think there's lots to be done, or especially around national security and defense. That's where I've been had the privilege the last 2.5 years to be on the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, one of the only committees that wasn't impacted by the prorogation over the last number of months. We still met and continue to work. We tabled another report on lawful intercept with the Prime Minister back in the start of March. Now we've almost finished. We'll see. It'll be up to whatever the committee looks like after this next parliament, after the election, for the role of the National Security Intelligence Advisor. It was our committee that came up with the foreign interference report that shed light on some of the challenges and lack of action by the Liberal government. And I'd point out to your viewers there, David, that report, the committee, everything on that committee is done unanimously. Everybody agrees, or it doesn't make the report. There was 4 Liberals on that committee, 2 Conservatives, 1 NDP, 1 Bloc, and 3 Trudeau-appointed senators. And it was a pretty critical report of the lack of action, and hopefully, and we're still seeing it as we've seen even in recent news in the last couple of weeks of where other states are still trying to influence. And unfortunately, we even seen a sitting or an incumbent MP in Paul Chang down in Toronto have to resign over his inappropriate comments about his Conservative candidate or opposition candidate, and suggesting to Canadians that he should be taken to the Chinese consulate and for a bounty on his head and sent to China. Not back to China. He's a Canadian citizen. But again, foreign interference, something big. And your other point, David, about former Afghan women MPs, really proud to have been part of an all-party group to help get former Afghan women MPs out of Afghanistan and to safety, because again, they represent everything the Taliban despise. And 2 tours in Afghanistan, as we mentioned earlier, coming up next week, the 17th anniversary, unfortunately, of the 18th anniversary, wow, time flies, of when I lost 6 of my soldiers in Afghanistan. And so that country has a lot of my heart and soul in it, and anything we can do to especially give the young women and girls a future in that country, I think is of vital importance. So I'm very proud to be part of that group, working together to just make a difference.
And there are some success stories in that story, so that it's not just that they came to Canada, but from some of the media reports I've seen, they are doing very, very well.
They are, David.
Yeah. Well, what drew you to the Conservative Party in the first place, Alex?
Well, I'm a farm boy from Tara, right? I grew up in a very modest household, the oldest of 5 boys. And we didn't have a lot, right? But we didn't lack either, because I'm blessed to grow up in a family where we could grow a lot of our food, do the chores. I raised 700 ducks, a couple hundred chickens, a couple hundred turkeys, 50 geese every year. Dad got Mom a cow for her birthday. She got to milk that cow by hand for twice a day for 10 years. And so I'm a big believer in fiscal responsibility, and that, we can't be spending money that we don't have. I'm a big believer that government should be as small as possible. It should do those things that it must do to help, especially those in need. And the big ticket items, obviously, at the federal side, dealing with things like national defense, immigration files, your federal taxes, et cetera, foreign relations, foreign affairs, trade agreements, et cetera. But that's where the focus is. So, I mean, at heart, I'm a true fiscal conservative. I believe you don't spend money that you don't have. And, you can invest it wisely in certain things, but that's sort of what absolutely drove me to the Conservative Party, is, that belief in our country, belief in our military, belief in Canadians' freedoms, and belief in fiscal responsibility, good fiscal management.
I'm sure you've already been out knocking on doors, even in this lousy weather. What are you hearing from voters that are the top 3 issues that you might be hearing at the door?
Well, so the biggest thing, and this, to be frank, really hasn't changed, David, a whole lot. We do have the U.S. tariff threats, and that's definitely something that is coming up this time around for the first time. But really, the biggest message that I've been hearing for the last 5 years, and especially now still, is the affordability challenges. And that breaks down into a number of issues. It's whether it's, inflation's come somewhat back under control, food inflation, not so much so. So just that ability to have those life necessities has been key. Obviously the getting rid of the Liberal carbon tax was something that I've been hearing nonstop, literally in our neck of the woods over the last 5 years, because it's been impacting not only those rural Canadians' ability to, in our neck of the woods, to get to their work, get their kids to their sports. It's impacting our agriculture industry massively, right? Because all our food needs to be grown or raised somewhere, and then it's got to get to the processing plants, then it's got to get to our grocery shelves, and all that has driven up food inflation over the last number of years to record 40-year highs. So obviously that's an impact. Housing, right? Another huge impact, especially for our youth. Our youth are struggling to find a place to live. And unfortunately, over the last decade, housing prices have doubled, rent has doubled. We're not getting there. And the current government seems to be focused on spending money on creating more bureaucracy, not less. And so it's why it's something that I'm still hearing at the doors, especially for the youth. And I think that's why you see, I'm shocked at actually how many youth are coming up to me, like cold blue. I've been out Nordnacken all day yesterday in Hanover, gorgeous day, cold but nice. And this is the first election where I've had people literally pulling up beside us as we're walking down the road, asking for a lawn sign and encouraging, and wishing me all the best. That the importance of finally getting change after 10 years of the Liberals being in government, that they want to see a conservative government. So that makes that boys that. Agriculture, but tied to that, obviously, I talked about the affordability bit, but it's the labor shortage. There's still all the industries across the area still looking for workers, right? Unfortunately, a lot of our industry or agriculture sector are very dependent upon, laborers, like manual labor type jobs, and jobs that it's tough because demographics. I believe we're still the second oldest riding in Ontario from a demographic perspective. So finding those youth, the good news for the youth, they have lots of opportunities and lots of different jobs available to them. But obviously, we need to help, give those good job opportunities and industries struggling. The final thing that is new, and I mentioned about this a little bit, is obviously these threats from President Trump in the U.S. around tariffs have been an issue. I think, to be fair to all the political parties, they're basically almost all of them are saying, this relatively the same message from a short-term perspective, and the importance of calling out Mr. Trump on these unjustified tariffs, the need to, even though it's going to hurt, to have reciprocal tariffs to go back against the U.S., because that's one way to, make them feel the pain. Unfortunately, in a tariff war, nobody wins, right? Both the average Canadian and the average American are going to be paying more for as a result of this. But that's why Mr. Poilievre just announced this morning the Keep Canadians Working Fund, right? A targeted temporary loan program for those businesses directly helping them to keep workers to keep their job. He as well mentioned in his speech this morning about the importance of tackling the dispute after the election is done, and that's actually going after an accelerated process to renegotiate the CUSMA or NAFTA agreement and to pause tariffs while those renegotiations are happening. But at the same time, during those negotiations, making sure, if it's a conservative government, to protect our borders, our resources, our farmers, our including our supply management sectors, our fresh water and our auto workers, and making sure that what's off the table, that the U.S. and Mr. Trump completely recognizes that our sovereignty, our laws, our currency, our land, our water, our skies, our Indigenous rights will always remain in control of Canadians. These are non-negotiable. And then the importance to really, and it's something close home to me, the final point I'll add on this, is the importance of building back our military and making sure our military is properly funded, and we're meeting that commitment of 2% plus of our GDP. Our military desperately needs that. And of course, with these ongoing challenges, when the U.S. is pulling back on some of these things, it means other countries like Canada needs to pull up and pull our weight better. And so this is something I will continue, and I've given speeches on in the House of Commons, and I'll continue to advocate for.
Yes, you would have firsthand knowledge of that situation, both from a current and a historical perspective.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. What about other issues which may not get it, well, have been important, but have kind of not, we haven't heard a lot about, and that's climate change. Where does your party stand on climate change issues?
Okay, I've talked about this at length, David, and it's a bit of a broken record. Obviously, we want to focus on uh, actionable, realistic goals to do it. And I've mentioned this on, I'm sure, talking to you in the past. I know I've done it with other public media here in our riding, is the importance of you know, actually getting ourselves and getting our resources, which are actually have some of the most stringent regulations from an environmental standpoint in Canada or in the world, I should say. So and it's counterintuitive, but actually getting our liquefied natural gas and some of our resources to other markets is one way we can actually help lower global greenhouse gas emissions. Right now, if we could get China and India onto Canadian liquefied natural gas instead of the coal, and they're going to be opening coal plants every month, we could reduce global greenhouse gas emissions by over 20%, right? So that's just one thing that we could do. And Canada right now is only responsible for 1.5% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So by us actually exporting our resources, our technology may seem counterintuitive, but it'll actually do more to help fight climate change around the globe. Another thing here locally, and we're blessed to have this, is we got I'll just give two business examples, right? We have hydrogen optimized here in Owen Sound that have global leading possibilities around hydrogen, green hydrogen, that could then therefore help drastically reduce emissions and help again with the way that climate change is fought on the global stage. Is something that I've been helping, that organization lobby the government to, qualify for certain benefits, even through that Sustainability Development Canada, the Green Slush Fund, that unfortunately, due to the Liberal appointed board there, the Auditor General found 186 conflicts of interest cases over almost $400 million in basically mismanaged funds. And I'll give you another example. Down in the southern part of the riding, we got Ice River bottling or sustainable. They got I can't, Ice River Springs bottling or whatever. But if you I encourage anybody that gets a chance to go into that organization and see or visit their website, because they're actually able to take plastics, which I think take a bad hit sometimes, because it requires less energy for them to reuse, and they basically are able to take certain type of plastic and completely recycle it, reuse it all the time. And they're actually a national leader right here across Canada. So I'm just saying it's supporting those type of organizations that are actually leading the technological changes and development that I think is absolutely important. And that's what our party believes in. It's not taxing the average Canadian. The Liberals have come out saying that, they're putting on pause the carbon tax. In fact, David, you would have noticed just in the last 2 days, basically almost a 20% decrease in fuel per liter at the gas station, despite them fighting it, for the last 5 years that I've been elected and saying this is the only way to reduce emissions. They've now finally recognized that it's costing Canadians too much, especially those of us in rural Canada. But the fact of the matter, Mr. Carney has publicly spoken about, well, he's going to raise the industrial carbon tax because somehow he thinks Canadians don't use steel at all. And he said this, I think, on CTV News down in Atlantic Canada a few weeks back, or a month back now, which I'm sorry I call malarkey on that, because the last time I checked, my automobile, my truck, most of the vehicles on the road have a fair bit of steel in them. When we construct our houses, they have a lot of steel in them. Our industry requires a lot of steel and aluminum. And so by punishing our industries here in Canada and not somehow thinking it's not going to impact the consumer, I frankly don't believe that that's going to do anything to help solve it. I think the key thing is to continue to drive drive the market into these technologies and make it affordable for Canadians to have an alternative. And so that's some broad brush points there, David, but hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely, Alex. I was just going to ask you, Grey Bruce is known for its both its nuclear power and a number of other industries, but we also have a big agricultural sector. And what about the tariffs on agriculture? It's as we're taping this, we don't know yet, but the expectation is our agricultural sector will take a huge hit on tariffs. What does your party say about that particular sector?
Well, I already announced there, or told you, David, I read some of the stuff that Mr. Polyev said this morning about the need to protect our agricultural sectors. Obviously, some sectors take for some reason, are a bigger target for President Trump, unjustly, really. But the biggest thing, I had the fortune of attending the sort of the all politicians meeting, agricultural meeting held by the Grey and Bruce Federations of Agriculture just at the start of March. I think it was, or mid-March. It's all aboard now. It's been a busy few weeks. And that was the biggest talking point. A phenomenal brief there by, I think his name was Al Musselman, who gave a phenomenal eye-opening report on his analysis of just what these tariffs, depending on how they come in, how they're going to impact all our ag sectors. And remember, we're really big here in Bruce and Grey County on beef production, obviously dairy. Sheep, though, you'd be shocked at how many sheep we have, especially in the southern part of the riding, our apple orchards, etc. Everything is going to be impacted, especially around the processing capacity or kill capacity for our meat sectors, right? So whether it's beef, sheep, pork, there's challenges there. Actually, sheep's not too bad. They actually have a bit of an out on the processing capacity. However, for beef and pork, we definitely need to expand that. And so, look, our party's all about protecting those sectors with these tariffs, and to make sure that our farmers are taken care of. So, as again, that goes to the point that Mr. Polyev said, that with these counter tariffs, they need to actually, then money needs to flow back to those industries or sectors that are being hit because of their lack. But I am not, if things shut down on the processing capacity, in particular for our beef sector, we're in big trouble, especially for some of our feedlots here for our cattle side of the house. So this is something we need to fight vigorously for and defend. And it was by far a consistent message of concern at that Grey and Bruce County Federation of Agriculture meeting that I was at.
Yeah, it's my understand is that beef and pork go back and forth across the border quite a bit, and the processing, we don't have the processing capacity in this country, but
we do, but it's unfortunately really in two main companies. And,
yes.
and we only have really, a couple of them here in Ontario. It's something I've been working, because it requires all levels of government. And so it's something that I know during discussions I've been to, I haven't seen it become an official party plank yet, but it is something I've talked with our Shadow Minister of Agriculture, John Barlow, about. He actually visited this riding back in September and had a great visit. We visited pretty much all our sectors and talked about the importance of, even with some of the regulations to, which gets to the other thing that we've been advocating for years, is breaking down those interprovincial trade barriers, which includes if a factory or processing plant is capable of meets the provincial regulations, that they should be able then, get them that federal sort of licensing as well, which actually did happen during the COVID times. I thought it would be smart enough to stick it around, but because if we have provincial inspectors inspecting to make sure those kill plants or processing plants are of sufficient for provincial standards, I'm pretty sure with some collaboration, we could make sure that they meet the federal standard as well, because that would definitely ease some burden when it opens up that ability for more plants that aren't just that, especially for those meat products or livestock that is destined for international markets. And it's something we need even more, because obviously if these tariffs come into place as widely as they potentially could, and depending on what carve-outs or exemptions are given with the U.S., it is something, there's huge demand for Canadian beef and pork and other products, sheep in particular, too, around the globe. So we need to do more on that.
Believe it or not, we're approaching the end of our time, but I wanted to ask you, where is your campaign headquarters located, and how do people contact you?
So I'm in the same campaign office, exact same location I was last election. That's in the Heritage Place Mall. I should say both elections, but literally in the same location, just as you come in right beside the Leons on the into the Heritage Place Mall. To contact me, it's info@alexruff.ca. Or you can call the number. I'm actually feeling a little bad here. I don't have the number right in front of me. I might have it here before we finish talking, but I don't think so. But if everybody just goes to alexruff.ca, that's the easiest way to do it. It's different than alexruffmp.ca. The MP office stays open. I'm not in there, but my staff are in there to help any constituents out with issues with Service Canada, CRA, immigration, etc. However, alexruff.ca and all my contact information is on there, and that's the best way to get the phone number or come into the I think it's unit D01 that we are in the Heritage Place Mall. David?
Right, just outside of Owen Sound near Leon's. Now, you'll be out, I guess, visiting people and door-to-door knocking, and although this is a short, intense campaign, you'll be out there.
Been out there a number of days already. As I said, it's not been the nicest weather. Yesterday, I would argue, was likely the nicest day with the sun out, but it was chilly. So we're well dressed, well prepared. My conservative hockey jersey is what I'm sporting because it's got the big maple leaf and the big C on it, but it's got my name across the back, and it's actually a really good windbreak because it's one of the ones that's actually made to sort of NHL standards. So it's thick. And that's been helping going door to door. But yeah, we've been through Owen Sound and Hanover. In fact, I have some of my volunteers out in Meaford as we speak, despite the wind and the snow. And I'm heading out there shortly myself because that's the best ways to get that feedback. And even sometimes when you're talking to somebody that hasn't made up their mind on how to vote yet, or maybe they're not going to vote for me, they're impressed and I'm at the door, and we've already pounded, I don't know how many thousands of doors. I think I'm up to something like, I don't know, 500 or 600 doors myself just in the last 3 or 4 days. So my challenge is a bit like you, David. I don't mind talking to people, and I sometimes talk longer than I should. But I'm keen on answering anybody's questions or concerns, and that's my role versus my volunteers. Their job is just to sort of, make sure that the people know I'm in the neighborhood and try to get their support. But at the same time, they're the ones that if somebody really wants to talk to me, that I then go from one door to the next door that somebody wants to talk if they're home. So I actually enjoy it. It's a great part of the job.
And with that, Alex, I want to thank you for being part of Politically Speaking Election Edition. And Alex Ruff, candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada, best wishes, and perhaps we'll talk again.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. And thank you, friends. We'll be back.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
You're watching an interesting local show on Rogers TV and you want to know more. That's when you head to rogerstv.com. Our website provides more information about our programs, our hosts, our schedule, and about how you too can get involved with Rogers TV. Visit us online at rogerstv.com.
In baseball, there's nothing more important than making it home.
George Springer has tied the game.
Doesn't matter how you get there.
It's gone!
But I do it with style.
Boy, has he got some kind of power.
And a little swagger, too.
Because no matter where you happen to be,
Oh, what a play!
There's only one place.
Got it!